My name is Catherine Vale, and I was the family disappointment. At least, that's what my younger sister Lena liked to remind everyone, especially when she had an audience. The last time she did it, we were at her company's cocktail party on the rooftop of some downtown high-rise. She wore a tight black dress, all elegance and ambition, and I stood in the corner with a ginger ale in hand, wearing a simple blue blouse and slacks that had seen better days. "Catherine fixes microwaves," Lena said, smiling wide, loud enough for her colleagues to hear. "Well, not just microwaves, also air fryers, blenders, toasters. Whatever's broken, she can unscrew it." People laughed. I didn't. I've been called worse. I've had quieter insults cut deeper. But something about the way she said it, like I was a joke, a punchline, hit me different that night. I was just about to leave when the double doors swung open, and in walked Marla Kingsley, CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the region. She scanned the room briefly, then her eyes landed on me. And to everyone's surprise, including my sister's, she smiled and said, loud and clear, "Catherine, I was hoping I'd see you here." Lena went silent. The room did too. And in that moment, I realized, sometimes your reputation walks into the room before you ever have to say a word. I wasn't always the family disappointment. Once upon a time, I was the shining star, the one with the top grades, the college scholarship, the law school admission letter pinned to the fridge like a trophy. Our parents were proud. Lena, back then, still had braces and wide eyes that followed me everywhere. She used to say, "I want to be just like you." That didn't last long. When I was 22, everything cracked. It started with Mom getting sick. Dad tried to hide how serious it was, but I knew. I deferred my first semester at law school to stay home and help. Then Mom passed, quietly, like she'd just slipped away. And suddenly, I wasn't a future attorney anymore. I was the one folding hospital bills and cooking frozen dinners for a father who'd forgotten how to speak. Lena didn't handle it well. She threw herself into school, into dance, into pretending everything was normal. I didn't blame her. We were just two girls trying to survive in a house that echoed. I never did go back to law school. The scholarship expired. I got a job at a front desk to pay the utilities. And when Dad's grief turned into drinking, and the house started to fall apart, leaky faucets, short circuits, broken AC, I did what I had to do. I learned how to fix things. You'd be surprised how empowering it feels to hold a voltage tester and figure out what's wrong with something no one else can make work. I watched videos, I read manuals, I made mistakes and burned out 2 hairdryers before I got it right. But eventually, fixing things stopped being just about the house. It became my livelihood. I left the front desk job and opened a repair service. Just me, a secondhand workbench, and a big blue Vale Fixes It sign I painted myself. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And every time I handed back a working toaster to an elderly woman who didn't want to buy a new one, I felt something law school never gave me: peace. But our family didn't see it that way. At Thanksgiving dinners, I was the other daughter, the one who fixed wires and appliances, while Lena dazzled everyone with her job and corporate strategy, her sleek outfits, her perfect LinkedIn page. She worked for Marla Kingsley, the kind of boss who made headlines. Lena talked about Marla like she was royalty. I didn't mind being invisible at those dinners, but Lena, she made it hard to stay invisible. She'd say things like, "At least I didn't waste my degree tightening screws," or, "Some of us have clients who don't live in retirement homes." She said them with a smile, the kind that dares you to react so she can call you sensitive. I didn't bite. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that over the years, I'd quietly grown a client base. One of them, through a third-party logistics partner, had a name I recognized: MK Tech Systems. That's right, Marla's company. They sent us busted devices from their warehouse team. No one from the top ever contacted me directly, but the pay was solid, the work steady. It helped me save up, helped me upgrade equipment, helped me hire a part-time assistant. I never bragged, never name-dropped. I just kept fixing what was broken. But the more I stood still, the faster Lena sprinted ahead, at least in appearances. She posted about conferences, promotions, her perfect boss babe life. And the more she climbed, the smaller she seemed to think I'd become. and I let her think that. Because I learned a long time ago, when someone wants to look down on you, correcting them isn't your job. Time has a way of straightening out perspective better than any argument ever will. I just didn't realize how quickly that lesson would come knocking. The thing about quiet success is that no one really notices it. Not at first. My shop wasn't flashy. It was tucked between a laundromat and a tailor in a faded brick building on the east side of town. The sign out front was hand-painted and a little chipped from the weather. Inside, the floor squeaked and the coffee was always lukewarm. But it was mine. I built it up piece by piece, literally. I refurbished shelves, installed my own lighting, even wired in extra outlets when I started handling more industrial repairs. People came in for broken remotes and left with stories. I got to know their names, their grandkids, the way their lives paused when something stopped working. I never advertised much. Word just spread. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing myself as a failure. I woke up, worked with my hands, paid my bills. I didn't owe anyone anything, not a boss, not a committee, not a parent asking when I'd go back to real work. I fixed things that mattered to people. Heirloom radios, grandmother's fans. One client brought in a coffee machine her husband had used every morning before he passed. She cried when I gave it back running like new. Not because of the machine, because it brought something back she thought was gone. That meant something to me. And on the back end, through a logistics partner, we began getting bigger contracts. Bulk batches of malfunctioning units, mostly from distribution centers. We never got names, just codes, invoices, serial numbers. Then one day, while filing away a service order, I noticed something stamped on a delivery slip. MK Tech Systems. I stared at it for a long time. Marla Kingsley's company. I hadn't realized that our little operation had ended up supporting her supply chain. It wasn't direct. We were likely the subcontractor of a subcontractor. But the devices kept coming. We fixed them on time, with precision, and they kept paying. I never told Lena, not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't matter to her. Nothing I did ever mattered to her, unless she could belittle it. Meanwhile, she was rising fast. Promotions, panels, podcasts. She became one of those people who gave career advice on LinkedIn like she'd invented ambition. I saw her in an online article once, smiling in front of a skyline titled, Women to Watch in Tech. I watched her all right. I watched her forget where we came from. Sometimes I wondered if she remembered that I was the one who taught her how to set up her first laptop, that I stayed up late reading financial aid forms so she could apply to college, that I took a job I didn't want so she wouldn't have to drop out when Dad lost his insurance. But that's the thing about memory. People only keep the parts that make them feel proud, or powerful. And the older I got, the more I stopped needing anyone's version of the truth but my own. I had employees now, 2 part-timers. A retired electrician named Sam and a high school kid named Miles, who wanted to learn. I paid them well. I paid them on time. They respected me. And I ran my little shop with the kind of pride Lena wouldn't understand. We were never in the same room for long anymore. Family holidays became smaller. Our dad moved to Arizona and stopped asking questions. I sent him birthday cards. He sent back photos of sunsets and quiet. We were all just drifting. So when Lena called one afternoon and said, "You should come to our company's cocktail mixer. It'll be fun," I was surprised. I asked, "Why me?" She laughed. "Why not? You never come to these things. It's time you met some people who might inspire you to level up a bit." That should have been the first red flag, but I said yes, not because I needed her validation, but because I had a feeling that time was about to straighten out some perspectives, and I was ready to let it. I showed up 10 minutes early. Lena's company had rented the rooftop of an upscale downtown building, the kind of place with string lights, imported wines, and glass panels instead of rails, so you could see the whole city twinkling beneath your heels. People floated around in expensive suits and sharp heels, laughing with the kind of practiced ease that comes from networking more than living. I wore a navy dress I'd had for years, clean, simple, nothing flashy. I did my makeup the way I always did, just enough to look awake. I brought a small gift bag for Lena with some locally made coffee she liked when we were younger. A peace offering, maybe, or maybe just a habit I hadn't let go of yet. When I walked in, she didn't notice me at first. She was surrounded, her voice the loudest in the group, hands animated, posture perfect. I stood off to the side, sipping club soda, watching her perform. Eventually, she spotted me. "Catherine," she said, drawing attention. "You came!" Heads turned, and that's when I felt it, that pause. That moment when a room evaluates someone and files them under not important. Lena gestured toward me. "Everyone, this is my sister. She's in hardware repair?" The way she said it, it was soft, but deliberate, like she was tossing me a label and daring me to correct it. I smiled. "I run a repair and refurbishment shop, yes." One of her coworkers blinked. "Like, for computers?" "Among other things," Lena laughed. "She's being modest. She can fix just about anything with a plug." Then to her friend, "She's like a walking warranty." People chuckled. I didn't. I nodded, still smiling. There was a sharp edge in my chest, but I kept it buried. Lena wasn't finished. She turned to a man in a gray blazer. "Ben, remember I told you about my sister? She's the one who fixed Mom's old blender instead of letting her upgrade. I swear, Catherine would rather fight technology than embrace it." More laughs. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Not because I didn't have a comeback, but because nothing I said would change anything. Not in that moment. So I turned toward the table, pretending to study the hors d'oeuvres. That's when the elevator chimed. The rooftop went quieter. Not silent, but still. A shift in atmosphere. Out stepped Marla Kingsley. She wore a burgundy pantsuit, hair slicked back, face unreadable. She had that presence, that energy that made people stand straighter when she walked in. People cleared a path instinctively. She didn't pause, didn't scan the crowd for Lena. She walked straight toward me. "Catherine," she said, holding out her hand. "I didn't expect to see you here." I shook it, firmly. "Neither did I," I replied. Lena's voice behind me cracked. You two know each other?" Marla turned. "Your sister is the reason your logistics team has been able to maintain a 97% equipment turnaround. You've been using her services for 2 years. I assumed you knew." The silence that followed was exquisite. Lena blinked. I thought that was a third-party contractor." "It is," Marla said. "But Catherine's shop is the one they sub to. She's solved problems your team couldn't even diagnose." She turned back to me. "We've never met in person, but your work speaks volumes." "Thank you," I said, my voice calm. People around us shifted. No more forced laughs, no more small talk. Lena stood still, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. I didn't rub it in, didn't gloat, just offered a polite smile. Because I wasn't there to win. I was there to witness the moment the truth walked into the room, wearing a pantsuit and a name badge. Marla excused herself to greet others, and I turned back toward the snack table. My ginger ale hadn't even warmed in my hand. Lena approached slowly, her voice lower now. "Why didn't you say anything?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Would it have made a difference? She didn't answer, and for once, that was enough. After that moment, something in the room shifted. Not just for Lena, for everyone. People who had ignored me earlier now approached with cautious curiosity. They asked about my shop, the kind of work I did, how I got started. I answered simply, without embellishment. The truth didn't need decoration. It just needed space to stand on its own. Marla passed by again later, this time with a drink in hand and a quieter tone. "You've got a good eye," she said. "I've looked at your diagnostics. Your team solves things our engineers give up on." "I appreciate that," I said. "I have good people." She smiled, then leaned in slightly. "I value precision. And loyalty. If you ever want to skip the middleman, let me know." She handed me a card, sleek and embossed. I tucked it into my purse without looking at it. "I'll think about it." She nodded and walked on. Lena stood about 10 feet away, watching. When I made eye contact with her, she didn't look away this time. I walked over slowly. No point in dragging it out. She was gripping the rim of her wineglass like it was anchoring her. I didn't know, she said quietly. I know, I replied. She searched my face, maybe looking for anger, or forgiveness, or an opening. I didn't mean to embarrass you, she added. Yes, you did, I said. Not harsh, just factual. You just didn't expect it to backfire. She flinched a little. I let the silence stretch. Look, she said. I've worked hard to get where I am. You dropped everything and just settled. I didn't understand it. No, I said calmly. You didn't look closely enough to try. She blinked. I didn't settle, I added. I rebuilt. She swallowed hard. I guess I always thought you gave up. I nodded. A lot of people did. That's the luxury of distance. I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because it was the truth. Sometimes people build their stories about you around the pieces that serve them best. And when you grow in silence, it confuses them. It threatens their version of how the world is supposed to work. Lena glanced around, her voice barely above a whisper. Did you come tonight? To prove something? I actually laughed. Just once, quiet and short. No, I came because you asked. She looked down. I didn't press her. She was already carrying enough embarrassment for both of us. And honestly, I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Catherine, she said, I really am sorry. I nodded. Good. Now do better. She nodded slowly. I could see the gears turning. Whether she'd change or not, that was her journey, not mine. I said goodbye a little while later. No dramatic exit, no parting shot, just a quiet farewell. As I rode the elevator down, I thought about Marla's card. I still hadn't looked at it. I didn't need it to mean anything more than it already had. Because that night wasn't about opportunity or exposure or vindication. It was about balance. About watching the scale tilt back to where it should have been all along. People say revenge is sweet. But this wasn't revenge. It was just truth. Undeniable, unpolished, and overdue. And sometimes that's more powerful than anything else. I didn't take Marla's job offer. I still have the card. It's in a drawer in my shop, tucked beneath a stack of receipts and old instruction manuals. Every now and then I look at it, not because I regret saying no, but because it reminds me that I didn't need to be discovered to matter. Some people climb ladders, others build solid ground. I chose the ground. My shop is still running, busier now. The exposure helped, sure. A few new clients came in because of the party, and word spread a little further. But that's not what I hold on to. What stays with me are the quiet wins. The 80-year-old man who brings me his late wife's antique mixer and thanks me with tears in his eyes. The single mom whose only laptop I managed to bring back to life before her online midterms. The teenage assistant I hired last summer who now wants to start his own repair truck. That's the legacy I care about. Lena and I talk more now, carefully, not like before. Not like sisters who braid each other's hair and share secrets, but like people who are trying, people who've seen each other clearly for the first time and are still learning what that means. She hasn't mocked me since. Sometimes she even asks for advice. Small things, like budgeting, or how to fix her thermostat. I answer, not because I need her validation, but because I've let go of needing anything from her at all. What I've learned, more than anything, is that respect doesn't arrive with applause. It comes in the quiet after people finally stop talking long enough to listen. I never raised my voice. I never corrected the room. I never shouted, "Look at me!" But when the moment came and truth walked through the door, I didn't flinch. And neither did my worth. Because it was never missing, just underestimated. So if anyone ever asks what I do, I tell them the truth. I fix what's broken. And I don't just mean appliances. I'm Sabine Alden, 30 years old, environmental consultant, and, until that dinner, the daughter who never caused trouble. That Sunday night, I showed up to family dinner with a bottle of red and a polite smile, prepared to sit through another hour of lukewarm roast and recycled small talk. What I didn't expect was for my father to lean back, carve into his steak, and casually announce, "Tessa will be moving into your apartment next weekend." Not ask, not suggest, just declare. I almost laughed, almost, but then I looked across the table and saw my mother already checking her calendar, and my sister, oh, my sister, was sipping her wine like this had all been worked out days ago. That's when I knew. They weren't waiting for my opinion. The apartment I had spent 5 years saving for, the space that had become my sanctuary, my proof that I'd carved a life out of nothing, they'd just handed it to someone else. They thought I'd nod, like always. They thought I'd swallow my objections, like always. They thought wrong. This time, I had a plan of my own, and it started with letting a stranger open the door. When people talk about family, they rarely mention the quiet architecture of favoritism. How it's not always grand gestures, but the small, relentless ones, the subtle erasures, the silent assumptions that do the damage. I was the middle child in a family that swore they didn't play favorites, but everyone knew better. Tessa, my younger sister by 4 years, was the golden one. Bright, bubbly, effortlessly adored. Her college painting shows were funded by my parents, her failed ventures chalked up to life experience, and her messes, always someone else's to clean up. Meanwhile, I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college and drove the same dented Toyota Corolla for nearly a decade. They said I was so independent, like it was a compliment. What they meant was, "You don't need us, so we won't show up." The apartment in the Pearl District was more than an address. It was years of missed birthdays, skipped vacations, and Sunday nights tutoring high schoolers in algebra while my friends went out. I signed the lease 2 years ago, and every time I walked through that front door, it felt like a quiet victory. Brick walls, sunlit floors, a space that finally belonged to me, not because it was given, but because it was earned. Tessa, on the other hand, treated stability like a pit stop. After every breakup, she'd show up at our parents' place with tear-streaked cheeks and an overstuffed duffel, and they'd hand her the keys to a car, a guest room, a new beginning, again and again. Once I needed emergency housing after a pipe burst in my first apartment. Tessa told me her guest room was off-limits because it was being used for art storage. My parents suggested I figure it out. That was the pattern. Sabine the solver, Tessa the saved. Lately, though, something had shifted. After years of therapy and self-work, I'd stopped confusing peacekeeping with self-respect. I'd started saying no, softly at first, then with more clarity. When I declined to host Thanksgiving last year, my mother made a comment about how strange it was that I wouldn't uphold family traditions. But I did it anyway. I was learning how to breathe without asking permission. Still, I kept the monthly dinners. They were my last olive branch, 90 minutes of conversation and eye contact, just enough to avoid being labeled the ungrateful one. And they usually ended with my quiet retreat back to my own world. But this dinner? It was different. This dinner would break the pattern. The Sunday it all happened, I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. It was a small rebellion, barely noticeable to anyone but me. My mother still greeted me with a stiff hug and a pointed glance at the clock. My father launched straight into commentary about Portland traffic, as if I'd been gone for months, not just running late by design. Tessa was already there, lounging on the couch like she owned the place, legs draped over the armrest, wearing boots that probably cost more than my month's rent. She waved without getting up, wineglass in hand, phone in the other. Her performance of casualness was perfected, as if she were a guest star in her own life, waiting for someone to write her next scene. Dinner began like every other. My father monopolizing conversation with politics and market trends, my mother fishing for updates, but mostly wanting to talk about the neighbor's remodeling plans. I offered my usual sanitized report on work, keeping it bland enough to avoid criticism, but not so bland they'd accuse me of withholding. I was midway through describing a wetlands restoration project when my father cleared his throat. the signal that someone was about to drop a bomb. "Tessa has some news," he announced, glancing at her like a proud MC introducing a headline act. She looked up from her phone and gave a perfectly timed sigh. "Jason and I broke up." Jason. Right. The crypto bro with opinions about everything and empathy for nothing. I'd met him once. He'd spent the entire evening explaining why government regulation was a scam. Apparently, the lease was still in his name, and he was insisting she keep paying, even though she was moving out. "It's just not fair," Tessa added, her voice laced with performative exhaustion. My mother reached over to squeeze her hand. She shouldn't have to go through this on top of heartbreak. I nodded, mostly to keep things moving, but then came the twist. "So," my father said, slicing into his steak with the precision of a judge delivering a verdict, "we've figured it out. Tessa will move into your place for now." He didn't look at me. No one did. My mother was already planning aloud. "You work late anyway, and there's that spare room. We can move her stuff next Saturday." The steak turned to sand in my mouth. "I actually use that room," I said evenly, choosing each word with care. "It's my office." "You can work at the kitchen table," Tessa said with a laugh, waving her hand like she was solving a crossword. My dad leaned back. "It's just temporary. Family helps family." Ah, that phrase. The ultimate hammer. Family helps family. Unless you need help, unless you're the one asking. I watched them plan the dismantling of my sanctuary like it was a group vacation. They didn't even ask if I'd be home next weekend. They just assumed I'd be available and agreeable. That tightness in my chest returned, the one I knew too well, the one that came every time I was expected to bend. "I'll need to check my lease about long-term guests," I said, smiling like it didn't cost me something. My mother waved her hand. "That's just a formality." Of course it was, to them, but not to me. I helped clear the dishes in silence, but my mind was already moving. For the first time, I wasn't rehearsing how to explain myself. I was planning a way out, and this time I wasn't going to ask permission. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't call a friend to vent. I made tea, turned on the lamp beside my reading chair, and opened my lease. Page 12. Subletting prohibited without prior written approval. Guests staying more than 14 consecutive days require background checks and must be added to the lease. Perfect. I didn't see those clauses as obstacles. I saw them as armor. Next, I called Blake. He was a colleague from another firm, sharp, quiet, recently divorced, and currently staying in a temporary rental while his condo was being repaired. A week ago, he'd mentioned needing a place for a few weeks. "Would you be interested in staying at my place while I'm away on a work trip?" I asked, keeping my tone professional. "You'd be fully covered under a short-term sublease." Blake didn't hesitate. "That would actually help a lot. Are you sure?" "I'm sure." The next morning, I visited the building office, where Tanya, the property manager, recognized me immediately. "I'm planning to be away for a couple weeks," I told her casually. I wanted to confirm the policies around guests and temporary occupants. She handed me a printed packet. "We don't allow anyone to stay longer than 2 weeks without approval. Security will stop anyone not on the lease. No exceptions. Even if they claim to be family? Especially then." That afternoon, I drafted a clean, formal sublease for Blake, filed it with Tanya, and scheduled a walkthrough of my apartment for the following evening. I also rented a small storage unit and quietly moved out anything irreplaceable. My journals, family heirlooms, documents, my backup hard drives. That same night, I received a message from Tessa. "Should I bring my own bed or just use yours?" I stared at the text for a moment, then replied, "Still figuring out logistics. Let's talk next week." Vague, polite, useless. The next few days passed like chess. My parents sent texts asking about visitor parking, shelf space, closet clearing, all under the assumption that I was preparing for her arrival. I replied when necessary, kept it brief, let them mistake my quiet for consent. Wednesday evening, Blake came by. I walked him through the place, handed over keys, and explained the situation carefully. "If my family shows up, you don't have to explain anything, Eng," I said. "Just let them know you're the legal occupant during this time." He raised an eyebrow. "That bad?" "They mean well, but they don't listen. This is the only language they understand." He nodded slowly. "Don't worry, I've dealt with people who assume they own what isn't theirs." Friday morning, I bought a weekend ticket to a quiet hotel on the coast and requested remote work access through my job. Personal reasons, minimal details. By Friday night, I'd installed a security camera facing my front door. I gave Blake the access code and emailed the building office my travel schedule. Everything was logged, filed, approved. Saturday, I packed my suitcase, turned off family notifications on my phone, and took one last slow walk through the apartment. I paused in the office, where my diploma hung next to a framed map of the wetlands I'd helped protect. They thought that room didn't matter. They had no idea. As I locked the door and stepped into the elevator, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not fear, not guilt, control. Sunday morning dawned crisp and clear, a perfect fall day in the Pacific Northwest. I woke in my quiet hotel room 30 minutes from home and checked my phone. 12 missed calls, 5 from my mother, 3 from my father, 4 from Tessa. The last text, timestamped 10:45 a.m. Read, "We're almost there. Don't make this difficult." At exactly 11:03 a.m. My security app pinged. Motion detected. I opened the feed and watched it happen in real time. There they were, my parents and Tessa, standing outside my apartment door. My father knocked with growing force. My mother rang the bell again and again. Tessa stood behind them, talking on her phone, gesturing with increasing frustration. Then the door opened. Blake stepped into view, coffee mug in hand, calm as sunrise. He said something I couldn't hear, but the way my father leaned forward, then recoiled, told me he hadn't expected to see a stranger. My mother froze, one hand pressed to her chest. Tessa's expression collapsed into disbelief. Moments later, a security officer appeared, arms folded, clearly explaining protocol. My father pulled out his phone, likely trying to escalate things to building management. It didn't work. They were escorted to the elevator without setting foot inside. My phone exploded immediately after. My father's voicemail. "This is unacceptable. That man is not authorized. We'll be contacting your landlord." My mother's, "Sabine, how could you humiliate us like this? Your sister is heartbroken. She has nowhere to go." Tessa's message was pure fury. "You're a monster. You didn't even tell me. You blindsided us. I hope you're proud of yourself." I turned the volume down and ordered room service. Later, Blake called. "They tried everything," he said, almost amused. "Your dad claimed I forged the paperwork. Security reminded him that's a criminal accusation. He shut up after that." I thanked him again. "Are you still okay staying there?" "Absolutely. They can pound on the door all they want. It's locked." By evening, the text shifted from anger to emotional bait. A photo of Tessa sitting on our parents' couch, surrounded by boxes. "This is what your stubbornness has done," my mother wrote. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the more unhinged messages to my friend June, a paralegal who had agreed to keep a record, just in case things got ugly. "They're spiraling," she texted back, "which means it's working. Hold your ground." That night, I muted every thread except work and Blake. The rest could wait. I lay in bed, not shaking, not crying, just breathing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's daughter or sister or fallback plan. I felt like myself. Monday came with silence. Not peace, just the kind of silence that suggests regrouping. My phone barely lit up until noon, when my father sent a text. "Rachel's furniture is sitting in a rented moving truck. It's costing us daily fees. What do you suggest we do with it?" Not "can we talk?" Not "we made a mistake." Just logistics. I didn't answer. By 3 p.m., a voicemail from my mother arrived, more composed this time. "Tessa could just stay for 2 weeks. We can pay you rent, if that's what this is about. Family helps family." That phrase again, as if this were about money, as if I had placed a price on my boundaries. I sat in a cafe near the coast, watching the ocean churn against the rocks, and realized something deeply unsettling. My family truly didn't understand what they had done. Not out of malice, but out of entitlement so deep they couldn't see past it. That evening, a text came from the unlikeliest source. My brother Dylan. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Tessa's been whining all day. I don't know exactly what went down, but respect. Whatever you did, damn." It was the first message from any family member that didn't try to guilt me. It made me exhale, just a little. Tuesday morning, building management emailed me a note. "Your father attempted to dispute the legality of the sublease. We confirmed all documentation is valid and properly filed. No further action required." They had tried every door, every trick, every guilt trip, and it hadn't worked. That night, I began researching family therapists in our area. Not for now, but maybe for later. For when the dust settled. For if any of them ever wanted to rebuild something real. By Wednesday, their efforts softened. My grandmother called. A sweet woman, but always deployed when emotional manipulation needed reinforcements. "Tessa's had a hard time lately, honey. She just needed a little support. I know you're strong, but sometimes the strong ones forget how to be soft." I didn't call back. I couldn't. I wouldn't. Thursday brought another message from my dad, this time less aggressive, more transactional. "We're looking at apartment listings for Tessa. Let us know when you're ready to discuss what happened." It wasn't an apology, but it was a pivot. Friday morning, I replied, "I'm glad you're helping Tessa look for a place. I'll be back in town tomorrow and willing to meet Saturday afternoon." No explanation, no apology, just clarity. I returned to my apartment late that night. Blake had tidied everything, left a thank you note, and a spare key on the counter. The place smelled like lavender and clean sheets. Home. I took a long shower, made tea, and sat at my desk. The desk they thought I could just replace with a kitchen table. Tomorrow would be uncomfortable, but it wouldn't undo what I had built, because now they would be meeting a different version of me. One they didn't get to define. We met at a quiet coffee shop that Saturday. A neutral space, no memories, no furniture anyone could claim. I arrived early, settled into a corner table, and waited. My parents came in first, composed but cautious. Tessa followed, quieter than usual, her face unreadable. My father began, "I think you owe us an explanation for what happened last weekend." I kept my tone calm. "Actually, we need to talk about why you made decisions about my apartment without involving me at all." That stopped them. They deflected, like they always had. "It was temporary. You're always so generous. We thought you'd understand." But I'd heard it all before. This time, I didn't excuse it. I asked plainly, "Would you have done the same if it were Dylan's apartment?" The silence was heavy. Tessa finally broke it. "I didn't know they hadn't talked to you," she said. "They told me you were fine with it. I thought I was walking into something agreed on." She looked right at me. "I'm sorry, Sabine, that wasn't okay." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." We talked, not to fix everything, but to start unpacking it. I told them what I needed, to be treated like an adult, not a backup plan, that my boundaries weren't optional, that I wouldn't keep pretending silence meant agreement. Before we left, my mother reached out, not to hug me, just a hand placed beside mine on the table. "We didn't mean to push you out," she said. "We'll try to do better." I believed her, maybe not completely, but enough. That night, I returned to my apartment. Same walls, same light, same couch, but everything felt changed. Because I had changed. And in that stillness, I knew something for certain. This space wasn't just where I lived. It was proof that I could choose myself. Even when no one else did.